Jacob Roberts had always believed in the solid foundation of his marriage to Emma. Over nearly 10 years, they had shared moments of joy, hardship, and hope. Their paths had crossed in their early 20s in Norn, where Jacob worked as a junior engineer and Emma was just beginning her career in marketing after finishing university. Jacob admired Emma's ambition and the drive that propelled her swiftly up the corporate ranks. By her mid-30s, she was a senior marketing executive at Sanderson Enterprises, a renowned real estate development firm based in Australia. Meanwhile, Jacob found satisfaction in his role as a construction manager. Though his work lacked prestige, it brought a steady income, affording them a comfortable lifestyle. But recently, things had started to change. Emma had become more distant, often staying late at the office and citing work dinners or urgent client meetings as reasons for her absence. Her phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was now always within arm's reach. Though Jacob didn't want to be the jealous husband, he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was off. It began innocently enough with Emma talking frequently about her charismatic and brilliant boss, Greg Sanderson, whom she credited with transforming the company. Initially, Jacob thought little of it, seeing it as a normal discussion of work matters. But as the mentions of Greg grew more frequent, he noticed a change in her tone, a warmth and admiration that made him uncomfortable. Jacob tried to dismiss it, attributing her admiration to professional respect. Yet, as work dinners became more common, what had started as a rare occurrence soon turned into a weekly ritual. Each time, Emma had a convincing excuse: the fast-paced real estate market, Greg's ambitious vision, and the team's need to work late to stay ahead of competition. Despite his gut feeling, Jacob wanted to trust Emma. After all, they had been together for years without any cause for doubt. That was until one evening, while idly scrolling through his social media feed, Jacob saw a photo that made his heart drop. It was taken at a recent company event where Emma stood next to Greg. Their laughter and body language appeared far too familiar for just a boss and employee. The closeness between them seemed to go beyond professionalism, and Jacob felt a wave of suspicion wash over him. Was he overthinking it? Or was there something more between Emma and Greg than he had realized? A week later, Jacob's doubts grew stronger when Emma came home late one evening, her cheeks flushed with excitement. She told him that Greg had invited her to a small gathering at his house over the weekend, an intimate event with a few senior staff members. Jacob had never been invited to any of Greg's gatherings before, so he asked if he could join this time. Emma hesitated. "I'm not sure it's that kind of gathering," she said. "It's more work-related. Greg just wants the team to bond. It might be awkward if you came." The word awkward hit Jacob hard. Why would it be awkward? He had always gotten along with Emma's colleagues in the past, and the subtle unease in her voice only heightened his suspicion. "I'm sure Greg wouldn't mind," Jacob insisted. "I'd love the chance to meet the team." But despite his efforts to join, Emma's strange behavior continued, leaving Jacob more unsettled with each passing day. Something didn't feel right. As Emma rushed out for another event the next morning, Jacob could no longer ignore the gnawing doubt inside him. He had to know what was really going on. So, without hesitation, he decided to investigate further. His journey led him to Greg Sanderson's extravagant mansion in the affluent suburb of Mossman, overlooking the iconic Sydney Harbor. The grandeur of the residence screamed luxury and exclusivity, a world that Jacob was unfamiliar with, a world that made him feel out of place. Parking a few streets away, Jacob was overwhelmed by a mixture of anger, anxiety, and dread. He didn't know what he would find, but one thing was certain. He had to uncover the truth that Jacob needed to witness the truth with his own eyes. When he arrived at the party, it was already in full swing. He slipped through a side gate, careful not to attract attention, and found himself in the midst of a crowd. The backyard was buzzing with activity. Men in sharp suits, women in elegant dresses, all laughing and mingling as if their lives were flawless. The air was heavy with the scent of expensive perfume and cigars, and the sounds of clinking glasses and hushed conversations filled the space. Jacob scanned the crowd, his heart racing, until he spotted her. Emma stood near the pool, her arm casually draped over Greg's shoulders. They were engrossed in conversation, their faces far too close for comfort. Jacob watched as Greg leaned in, whispering something in Emma's ear, causing her to laugh softly. Her hand rested on his chest, a gesture that stung Jacob like a physical blow. His stomach churned as an unsettling wave of emotions washed over him. He remained frozen in place, rooted to the spot, unable to tear his gaze away from the scene. The undeniable intimacy between them hit him hard. The woman he had loved, the one he had shared his life with, now looked at another man with the same affection she had once shown him. For a brief moment, Jacob considered leaving, walking away and avoiding the confrontation he knew was inevitable. But something inside him shifted. His heart thundered in his chest as he made up his mind. He had to face the truth. With determination, he walked toward them. As he neared, Emma turned and their eyes met. Her smile faltered and her face paled. She had clearly not expected him to show up, let alone catch her in such a compromising moment. "What are you doing here?" Emma's voice trembled with shock. Jacob met her gaze, his voice steady but cold. "I could ask you the same thing, but I already know the answer." The noise of the party faded into the background as the three of them stood there. The tension in the air was thick with unspoken words, and Greg shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence slipping. He tried to speak, but Jacob quickly interrupted him. "This is between me and my wife," Jacob said flatly, his eyes fixed on Emma. Emma seemed on the verge of saying something, but no words came out. The truth was right there, written all over her face. There was no escaping it. Jacob's heart ached with a mix of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. He had given her everything, his trust, his love, his loyalty, and she had betrayed him without hesitation. Without another word, Jacob turned and walked away, leaving Emma standing there, frozen in shock. The drive home was eerily silent, his mind a storm of conflicting emotions. The world felt like it had shifted beneath his feet, and everything he thought he knew had been torn apart. How had it come to this? How could the woman he loved so deeply betray him so completely? At home, the house felt cold and empty. Jacob sat on the couch, staring at the wall, replaying the night's events over and over in his mind. He couldn't comprehend it. Emma, his trusted partner, had been lying to him for months. The following days passed in a blur. That night, Emma came home late, but Jacob didn't confront her. He wasn't ready to face her yet. He needed time to process everything and figure out what to do next. Emma noticed a shift in their dynamic, but she didn't push him. They moved through the house like strangers, both lost in their thoughts. A week later, Jacob finally gathered the courage to confront her. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma's eyes welled with guilt and regret. "I don't know. It just happened. I never meant for it to go this far." Anger surged within Jacob. "You never meant for it to go this far, Emma. You've been deceiving me for months. How could you do this to me?" Emma broke down in tears, but Jacob felt no sympathy. The trust had been shattered, and there was no turning back. She had made her choices, and now they had to face the consequences. In the weeks that followed, Jacob struggled to come to terms with the betrayal. The fracture in their relationship was irreparable. They tried talking things through, but every conversation ended in more anger and tears. Eventually, Jacob realized that their marriage had reached its end. The hurt ran too deep, and the constant doubt and pain were unbearable. They agreed to separate, and Jacob moved out of the home they had once shared. Though it was a painful process, with time, Jacob began to heal. He found solace in his work, in the support of his friends, and in the quiet moments of solitude. He learned to forgive himself for not recognizing the signs earlier, and started to move forward with his life. In the end, Jacob understood that sometimes letting go was the only way to find peace and happiness. He came to realize that the people we love may not always be who we believe them to be, and while the pain of betrayal is harsh, it often uncovers difficult truths. Sometimes, The end of a painful chapter marks the beginning of a new, brighter one. Thank you for reading. If this story resonated with you, feel free to share your thoughts and experiences below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. Stay tuned for the next installment.